What's up guys, my name's Brandon and another iOS release means another battery saving tips video here on the channel. So in this one, we're going to be sharing over 40 tips and tricks to get the most out of your battery life and have you never complaining about battery drain again here in iOS 15. Now if you want to see more privacy oriented settings and more just ease of use settings to change in iOS 15, I did make a separate video about that and that can be found up in the cards and down in the description below. But again, this one is all about saving battery life here on iOS 15. And if you guys find yourself changing any setting throughout this video, I would appreciate if you gave this one a thumbs up. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. And we're gonna start off with installing an ad blocker in iOS 15. Now bear with me because there is something new here in iOS 15 related to this. But first, let me explain why this drains battery life, because every time you go to a web page with ads, obviously that website has to, pull in data from the advertiser to show the ad. Sometimes you'll get pop-ups. It just really makes the browsing experience not only just not user-friendly and annoying, but it also drains battery. So in iOS 15, there's actually a really easy way to install an ad blocker, and Apple is practically just telling us to do it, because if we go down to our settings and then go to Safari, and then if we go down to extensions, if we go into more extensions right here, you will see in the App Store, pretty much everything in here is related to content blockers. I mean, it's even right here, a whole section dedicated to content blockers. So Apple is practically telling us to block ads in Safari. So I would go through here and just find the one you like. I mean, they all pretty much do the same thing. I have one of the first ones that was ever in there called Kablock, and it works great. Just enable that and you're pretty much good to go. You don't have to have a separate app anymore. You don't have to have any type of VPN connection like you had to in the past. It's much easier now in iOS 15 with Safari extensions. The next one has to do with live text. And this is of course one of the best new features in iOS 15 that will allow you to scan text in real time when the camera notices it. And of course you can copy it from here, paste it, translate it, all of that. But if this is not useful to you and you don't see yourself using this very often, then disable it. Otherwise, your camera is going to always be looking for text, and that could eat away at your battery life. So go into your settings and then go to the camera section, and then down here, you will see it either say live text or show detected text. And you want to turn that off if that's not going to be a useful feature for you. Now keep in mind, this is only going to disable this feature when you're actually in the camera application. It's not going to remove it from actual photos, because you can see right here, live text is still active and you can still copy from screenshots. And if you take an actual picture, this just disables it from the actual camera view when you go into your camera and it views it in real time. The next thing you need to check on is inside of your iCloud settings. So if you go into your iCloud, then to the iCloud section right here, and then to iCloud Backup, there is a new section here in iOS 15 called Backup over Cellular. So if you have Wi-Fi, disable this because you don't want your data being backed up over cellular. Cellular in general eats up more battery life than just being on Wi-Fi. So you especially do not want your phone backing up all of your iCloud data over 5G. So I would disable that if you have Wi-Fi. So one of the biggest culprits of battery drain in iOS in general, especially in iOS 15, is geofencing. So if we go to our settings here and then go to privacy, location services, then all the way down to system services, you want to pay attention to the arrows with the outline right there. And if you go down, it will explain what each of these means. But basically this one right here with the outline means that it uses your location based on a certain trigger. So for me, it's on HomeKit, which means that I have something where HomeKit uses my location based on another variable, which in this case, I have my HomePod play music when I arrive home. So that means that my phone is always tracking my location and waiting on me to get home so that it can trigger my HomeKit to play my HomePod in the kitchen. This is something that I like, so I'm going to continue using it, but I know that it comes at the expense of draining some battery. So just keep an eye on these and just know what these purple arrows mean right here, especially the ones that are geofencing and just always tracking your location and basically just waiting on you to arrive home or arrive at a certain location. And since we're in here, we may as well go ahead and turn off some of these other toggles under system services that we just simply do not need to be on. So things like Apple Pay, merchant identification, I don't know why I have that on. I can go ahead and turn that off. Things like compass calibration. I mean, how often are you really calibrating your compass? I would go ahead and disable location-based alerts. I would disable setting time zone unless you just constantly are traveling and your time zone is constantly changing. Otherwise, you don't need that to be on. System customization, things like that, you just simply do not need to be using your location. Now, obviously things like, find my iPhone, things like share my location, and maybe things like emergency calls and SOS, those are things you want to leave this on for. But all the other ones, you probably don't need to be on. I mean, even if we go down, iPhone analytics, routing and traffic, you can turn those off. There's really no reason for those to be on. It's just going to drain your battery. Now, we also have significant locations, and this is something that I personally have turned off just because it tracks you everywhere you go and learns how you use your device, when and where. So there is one con with this, and the big con is that it does disable optimized battery charging. So if we go back all the way back to our settings and then to battery health, optimized battery charging, it will still show up as enabled, like it's working, but it will not work if you have significant locations turned off. So just keep that in mind. And if we head back into the privacy section here, I did just want to cover one last thing in this section. So if we go to location services right here, you want to take a look at your individual apps and keep a lookout again for the geofencing. So you can see there, I have it for alarm.com. So that is something important. That is something that I need it for. But if you spot anything that is not showing while using, you want to make sure pretty much every application shows either while using or never. So things like always need to be things that are important. So for me, whether I have this on always just because I have notifications for when it's about to rain, that is important for me. But if it's not important for you, you don't want to have that enabled. So most of these should be on while using or never. And then also when you're in here, take a look at the precise location. This is something you might want to disable. So like for me, HomeKit and home, that does need my precise location, but something like Instagram probably doesn't. I don't really want Instagram knowing my exact location. I just want it knowing my roundabouts. So that is also one thing I would go ahead and disable for certain applications. Now, one of the big new features in iOS 15 is called iCloud Private Relay. So if you go into our settings and then go to iCloud and then to Private Relay, you will see this feature right here. Now, this is part of Apple's iCloud Plus, which is basically just a rebranded version of iCloud. If you bought storage before, you get iCloud Plus for free, and that comes with Private Relay and Hide My Email. But Private Relay is something that you might want to consider disabling. Now, don't get me wrong, this feature is great, but you do need to know that it is going to impact your battery life. It's also going to impact your speeds, like when you're actually browsing in Safari, because it's taking your data and sending it through two relays. So it's going to slow down your speeds, and it's also going to eat away at your battery life, especially here in beta. So it loses connection pretty often. That eats away at battery life. It just is one thing you want to consider disabling if you want to have the best battery life possible and the best internet speeds possible as well. Now, if you guys have been watching my battery saving videos for the past couple of years, you would know that one of my biggest things that I really stress is that you need to keep an eye on what applications are sending you push notifications. So notifications are one of the biggest battery drainers. If you have notifications coming through for like 20 different people's tweets all throughout the day, that's going to eat away at your battery life big time. So what you want to do in iOS 15, it's really easier than ever now to, kind of disable those incoming notifications thanks to focus modes. So I would take advantage of focus modes to limit your push notifications. And the reason I say to just take advantage of the focus modes is because this way you don't have to go into notifications individually and just individually turn off notifications for each application like I had to in previous battery saving tips videos. And if you go into a focus mode, it makes it really easy because when you go in here, all you have to do is enable just certain applications that you want to be able to send you notifications when you're in this focus mode. But just take advantage of focus modes to limit your push notifications. And the next tip is kind of just a piggyback off of the previous one, but that is to consider making custom home screens based on when you're in a focus mode. So if you go into your focus mode right here, then go to home screen and custom pages, you may want to consider only enabling certain pages of your home screen when you're in that focus mode. That way it limits your distractions and limits the amount you use your phone, which of course is one of the biggest ways to drain battery is by using your phone when you don't need to and getting caught up in social media and things like that. So if you select a certain page and that focus mode is on, you will notice that you can only go in to these applications, which will limit the distractions and in turn limit the usage, which is something that will save you some battery life. Now, the next thing that could be causing some minor battery drain is if you go to your settings and then to Siri and search, and then down to these suggestions right here. So this is going to show content from Apple and suggestions from Apple. And I honestly would just turn all of these off. I mean, unless you want Apple sending you things that they think you will like, then I would just disable this, because what it's doing is Apple is just learning your behaviors. It's constantly tracking what you do on your device, and it tries to serve you things that it thinks you will want to see. So I have all these turned off. You can go through and read this. If you tap on this little link right here, you can read through it if you want to, but I have all of these disabled because when I search for something, I know what I want to search for and I don't need any type of suggestions or anything like that. So that's one thing I would also consider disabling. Now, the next tip has to do with music. So if you go to our settings and then go to music and then down to audio quality, and if you have lossless audio enabled, go to cellular streaming right here, and you want to make sure that this is not turned on high res lossless. And even lossless sometimes is going to eat away at your battery life. And the reason being is because these are really high quality codecs. I mean, the audio sounds great. The music sounds great. You know, I'm not going to say it doesn't sound good, but on cellular, what's going to happen is, especially if you go through places with spotty connection, your device is going to constantly be buffering and trying to load up these really high quality songs that take up a lot of space. I mean, you can see right here, a 3-minute song will be approximately 145 megabytes with high res lossless turned on. So just keep that in mind. I would honestly have this at high quality or even none for cellular streaming if you're really trying to save battery life. Like if you're on a road trip and you don't have a charger, I would turn this completely off if I were you, just because, you know, this is going to load songs and play songs at a much higher quality. And not to mention, lossless audio in general is going to consume a lot of data. So if you're not on an unlimited plan, definitely do not put on lossless when you are on cellular. Now, me personally, as you guys saw, I keep mine on high quality. I feel like that's a good medium. But, you know, if you're really trying to save the most battery life possible, just turn that off. But when you get back to Wi-Fi, just go ahead and turn that on lossless or high res lossless, because when you're on Wi-Fi, obviously things are not going to consume as much battery life, and there's probably not going to be near as much buffer as there was with cellular or 5G. Now, speaking of music, one thing that I would definitely not do is play your music at max or near max volume. So this is not only going to strain your speakers, and you're probably going to end up with busted speakers after a while, but it's also going to strain your phone's battery life because it's pushing a lot of energy to the speakers to play that music at near max volume. So I would not do that ever. I would put in headphones or connect to a Bluetooth speaker, something. Never play your music at max volume. Now, the next tip to save battery life is to disable Hey Siri. So if you go into your settings and go to Siri and search right here, I would just go ahead and turn off listen for Hey Siri unless you use it all the time. And the reason I say that is because if you have that turned on, not only is your phone going to always be listening for that in the background, but also, you know, it's probably going to pick up on some false triggers every once in a while. And that also will eat away at your battery life in the long run. So if you don't use Hey Siri at all, just go ahead and disable it. That way your phone is not constantly listening in the background for somebody to say that trigger word. And then also down here in Siri responses, I would turn this to when silent mode is off, and then also disable both of these. That's what I personally have set up and what I think is the best. Now, if you always do want Siri to respond, you could put that on always, but me personally, I only want spoken responses when silent mode is off. When my silent mode is on, that means I probably just don't want to hear Siri talking to me when I ask something or, you know, just to confirm anything. Now, the next tip is something that might seem obvious, but pretty much nobody does it. So that is to study your battery chart. So if you go into your settings right here and then go to battery, you just want to take a couple of minutes. I mean, this only takes maybe a minute or two to look at this chart right here and see if you see any sharp declines and match it up with what application was doing that, and just keep that in your head to know that was eating up your battery life, just so you maybe don't do it again, especially when in a pinch. So if I look at my battery chart right here, I really only see one thing that sticks out, and that's about right here. I see that sharp decline. If I go down here, it looks like something I was doing in YouTube and Safari was leading to that, and maybe Tesla. So maybe I was driving around that time as well, and maybe that's what was eating up some of my battery life. So you could take that and use that and just kind of piece together what was using the most of your battery life right there. That way you can kind of avoid doing whatever you did when you're in a pinch, or just to keep in your head, just to know what causes battery drain on your device specifically, because of course it's going to be different for every single person. The next thing you guys want to do is go into your settings and then go down to accessibility and then down to sound recognition. And you want this to be disabled. Unless you are hard of hearing or you have a disability, I would have sound recognition turned off, because otherwise your phone is going to be listening for these specific sounds in the background, and that is going to eat away at your battery life. Another feature that's going to eat away at your battery life is screen time. Now, unless you actually use screen time for maybe things like app limits, if you set app limits, or if you have a kid and you block certain websites, then you don't need screen time to be turned on. I mean, all this is doing is tracking every single thing you do on your phone, every app you open, every app you get notifications from, all of that. That's going to cause severe battery drain, and if you don't use this, there's really no point in having it on. So for me, I'm going to turn this off because I really don't use it that much anymore. Now, the next one has to do with iCloud Drive and cell connectivity. So if you go into your settings and then to cellular, then all the way down to the bottom, you will see iCloud Drive. So you want to disable this because you don't really need documents and data being transferred while on cellular. Again, I'm going to stress this multiple times. When you're on cell connectivity, when you're on 5G or LTE, it's going to eat away at battery life a lot more than if you were on Wi-Fi. So leave things like transferring data and iCloud backups, leave all of that to be done on Wi-Fi, not on cellular. And while we're in here, you may as well go ahead and disable Wi-Fi assist as well. And you can see mine's actually been working. So that means it was probably eating up some battery life for 292 megabytes of data. So what this does is it automatically uses cellular data when Wi-Fi connectivity is poor. So again, anytime you use cellular, it's going to use up more battery life, especially when it's kind of just constantly checking back and forth between cellular and Wi-Fi. So I would probably turn that off. And while we're on the subject of cellular data, you want to go down to your settings and then down to photos. And then you want to go to cellular data and you want this to be turned off, especially unlimited updates. I mean, it disables when you disable cellular data, but still, this is something, again, that you want to be done on Wi-Fi. When you have iCloud photos and you have shared albums, anytime you take a photo or a screenshot, it's going to constantly be updating in the background and updating that in your library on all your devices. So I would turn this off for cellular data, keep that to Wi-Fi. Now, the next battery saving tip is probably the only one on this list that does not have to do with the software, and that is to avoid heat. So heat is the worst thing you can do to a lithium ion battery. Aside from taking it out and hammering it, the worst thing you could do is literally having it in the heat constantly. So, some things that could cause heat on your phone. I mean, you guys know when your phone gets hot, you want to avoid that. And if you ever see that temperature warning on your screen, that is a very, very bad sign. You never want to have that, especially not more than a couple of times. So if you're out at the beach, if you're out at the pool, put your phone in a bag or put your shirt over it, or do something. Don't have it out in the heat, especially don't have the brightness turned all the way up when you're in direct sunlight. There's really nothing worse for the battery than doing that, than having your brightness all the way up and being in the direct sun while your phone is just baking. Now, the next few settings have to do with your display and kind of just some settings to save some battery life. So if you go into our settings, into accessibility, display and text size, if we go all the way down to reduce white point, this is something that is going to reduce the intensity of bright colors like this white. So you can take this anywhere from 25% all the way to 100%. And if you put it on 100% and then turn your actual brightness all the way down, you won't be able to see your screen like at all. So this is something you might want to consider doing if you don't want those intense whites. So maybe somewhere around the 30 to 50% range seems about like the sweet spot. And if we go back to our main settings right here and then to display and brightness and then down to auto lock, I would turn this on 2 to 3 minutes. Now, I have mine on never just because I record videos on this phone, but on my main device, I have my auto lock set to 3 minutes. And I used to have this always on never, but there would be times where I would fall asleep with my device on, my screen would be on, and that would lead to battery drain because my phone was on for 6-7 hours straight while I was asleep. So this is something I would turn on, and of course it could be kind of annoying because it dims, but that's why I put it up high to like 3 minutes. So I would just consider changing this from never to something like 2 to 3 minutes. And then right below that is raise to wake. And this is definitely something I would recommend turning off. And the reason being is because, it is a very convenient thing to be able to pull your phone up and it wakes up. Like if I do this real quick, if I just go like this, you can see it wakes up. You guys probably know the feature. It's convenient, but how many times has that happened when you don't want it to? I remember turning this on for the first time when it first came out, and I would always get false triggers. It would always turn on, or my phone would always wake up when I didn't want it to. And that, of course, is going to lead to battery drain. So I would just go ahead and turn that off. Unless you really love the feature and really just don't want to tap your phone one time, then I would just go ahead and turn that off. The next battery saving tip in iOS 15 is to avoid, or at least limit, third-party widget usage. So if you have third-party widgets, they're probably eating up some of your battery life more than you know. So I would just avoid those and just stick to the ones that Apple gives you. I know it's cool to customize it and everything, but it is going to eat away at your battery. And for the next 2 battery saving tips, we're going to go to my main phone here, and we're going to go to the cellular section, and then to cellular data options, and then to voice and data. And for this, you do not want to have 5G always on. I would always put this on either 5G auto or just stick to LTE. So if you don't have 5G in your area and you really never see your phone saying 5G, I would keep this on LTE and don't, even think about 5G. But if you get 5G around you, like I do, just have it on auto. That way it goes back and forth between LTE and 5G whenever it needs to. So I would have that on. And then also if we go back right here to data mode, I would have this set to either standard or low data mode. You do not need allow more data on 5G. Again, these are things right here that it mentions, like, software updates, automatic iCloud backups, and higher quality media. Those are all things that you just need to do on Wi-Fi. There's really no reason to do that on 5G because that's going to eat away at your battery life. So keep that on standard. Now, the next tip is something that is revolutionary, something you've never heard of before, and that is to delete applications you don't use. Yes, you heard me right. Just delete apps that you don't use. It seems so simple, but so many of you guys right now are like, oh man, I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to go in and delete all those apps I don't use. Now's the time. Just go into the App Store right here, go to your little profile right here, refresh your updates, and then from in here, you could delete these applications by swiping over, and this makes deleting them very, very simple. So now you have no excuse. Delete the apps you don't use. Otherwise, they're going to take up space in your app library over here, which could lead to battery life drainage, as well as, when you're searching for something, anytime you search in Spotlight search or anywhere on your device, it's going to search through every single application you have, which means the more apps you have, the more battery drain long-term you're going to face. So now's the time to delete those applications that you don't use and don't need. Now, the next battery saving tip is to use dark mode as much as possible when you're on an OLED display. So if you have an LCD display, just skip this step, just look at the time codes and go to the next one. But if you have an OLED display, I would turn on dark mode and keep that on as much as possible. And the reason being is because OLED pixels are shut off when you're in dark mode. Like when I go right here, most of the pixels are shut off. I mean, most of this black section right here are just pixels completely off and they don't use any power. Now, of course, when you have an LCD display, those dark pixels are on and they emit a small amount of light, which of course takes power. It takes battery consumption to do. So, it's not going to save a ton of battery life, but if you combine it with all the other tips in this video, it will make a difference being in dark mode. A lot of people just like the look of it, but there are some battery saving benefits to it as well. Now, the next tip is going to be one of the best battery saving tips in this video. And this is something I've been preaching for many years on the channel. And also one of the first things I tell family members when they come to me asking why is their battery draining so much. This is one of the first things I tell them. If you go into your settings and then go to mail and then to accounts, let's go on into fetch new data, and you want push to be disabled and you want fetch to be turned to manually. So the reason for this is because you don't need your new emails being pushed to your device every single time they come in. I mean, when one email comes in, you're going to get it, you're going to be notified. You don't need that. I mean, most people don't. Now, if you have a business account and you need to be notified of every single email, then sure, have this turned on to push and have it come through automatically. But for most people, I would have this set to manually. That way that the only time you get new emails is when you go into the mail application and refresh it. That's going to be the best way to save battery life on your device when it comes to emails, is to disable push and set fetch to manually. And you can also change it on a per account basis if you want to as well. Like if you have a business account, then of course set that up to be different than your regular email where you might get marketing emails. The next tip is another classic, and that is to disable vibration throughout your device. So if you go to your settings into sounds and haptics, you will see vibration up top right here. I would go ahead and disable that anytime you have, your phone working extra hard to vibrate the device, especially for every single call, every single text. I mean, that's going to strain your battery life, and it's kind of just unnecessary in my opinion. So just turn the vibrations off. And another one that seems very simple is to just simply turn on airplane mode when you do not have signal. So if you're on a road trip, if you're out somewhere where you just simply don't have signal, turn on airplane mode. I mean, you're going to waste tons of battery life by searching for cell signal when your device just has no signal, or if you have one bar. Just turn on airplane mode and you will save yourself a lot of battery life. And I say this from experience. It's happened several times on trips, like with hikes and just traveling through the deserts and things like that. You want to have airplane mode turned on to reduce the amount of strain from looking for cell towers and just cell connectivity in general. Now, the next tip was a hit in my iOS 14 battery saving tips video, so I figured I'd bring it back for iOS 15, and that is to set low power mode to turn on automatically at a specific battery percentage. So to do this, all you need to do is go into the Shortcuts application, go to Automation, tap on the plus in the top right, tap on Create Personal Automation, then go down to the bottom until you see Battery Level. So tap on Battery Level, and then in here you have the option to select your slider from anything from 0% to 100%. So I think that anywhere between maybe like 30 and 50% is the sweet spot. So I'll go to 40% right here, and I want this to be falls below 40%, and then tap on Next. Then we're going to add an action, and we're going to do low power mode. So let's just search for low power mode, set low power mode right there, and then tap on next. And then you can see it says when battery level falls below 40%, do is set low power mode. Then we want to disable this right here. We don't want it to ask before running. Tap on done, and then boom. Now every time my battery hits 40% or lower, I'm going to go into low power mode, and that will help me save battery life. Now, the next tip is to simply disable this HomeKit section inside of the control center if you don't use it or if you don't have any HomeKit devices. And the reason I say that this could save battery life is because there have been several times where I accidentally tap on one of my HomePods, or I tap on this section right here, and it will start playing the music from my phone and transferring it over to a HomePod, which will take up some battery life and some energy from my phone. So if you don't use this section at all, just disable it. If you go into your settings right here, then to Control Center, Show Home Controls, boom, it's gone just like that. And you don't have to worry about fat fingering and touching one of those HomeKit devices. The next one has to do with the camera application. If we go into our settings and go to camera and then to preserve settings, you want to make sure that your settings are preserved in here for whatever you want. So specifically for camera mode. So this is going to remember the mode you were in last. So if you go back into your camera right here, you don't want to be, over in like pano and have to go all the way over here to time lapse. Think about how many things you go through. You go through slow-mo, you go through video, you go through photo. Your phone is sitting there thinking about these different modes and getting you prepared to enter that mode, which is going to take battery life. It's not going to take a ton, but it will take battery life, especially for photo and video right here. So you want to make sure that your preserve settings is turned on so that you always open up to the section you were in last. Next up are a couple of simple App Store settings. So if you go to the App Store section and then go under cellular data, you want to make sure that automatic downloads is turned off. You don't want applications updating or just downloading automatically over cellular. You want that to be on Wi-Fi only. And then also for video autoplay, I would turn this on Wi-Fi only. You don't need videos autoplaying every time you go into the App Store when you're on cellular. Again, these are really small things that really don't seem like they're going to take up a lot of battery life, but when you combine everything together, it will at the end of the day. And if not at the end of the day, at the end of the week or at the end of the month or at the end of the year, you're going to notice a difference. Next up is a minor setting inside of Podcast. If you go to Podcast, block downloads over cellular is going to just do what it says. It's going to block downloads over cellular, which could of course eat up some battery life. Now, I like to keep the main cellular data toggle turned on just because I like listening to podcasts when I'm out and about, but you don't want these podcasts being downloaded over cellular. And if we go back into our main settings page right here and then go to privacy and then down to motion and fitness, you might want to consider turning this off. So me personally, I like tracking my step count, so I do not turn this off. But if you don't care about your step counts, then I would go ahead and disable this. And the reason being is because this uses your accelerometer, your gyroscope, and just other things throughout the day to basically track how fast your iPhone's going or how much it's moving throughout the day. So if you don't use this for a specific reason, I would just go ahead and turn this off. And then back on the main privacy page right here, if you go into Bluetooth, you want to disable any application in here that does not need to use Bluetooth. So some applications may request it and you may have given it to them in the past, but you can revoke that right here. So like Nest and Waze, they don't need Bluetooth, so I disable those. Tesla is the only one that actually needs it because it uses the Bluetooth as the car key, but just check for different applications in here that might not need to use Bluetooth. The next tip is one that I mentioned earlier, and that is to turn on optimized battery charging. So if you go into your settings and into battery health, you will see optimized battery charging right there. So that's basically just going to learn from your daily charging habits so that you only charge up to 80% and then it starts trickle charging. So you do need significant locations turned on for this to work, but that is something I would consider doing for the longevity of your iPhone's battery. The next tip is another classic that I always recommend, and that is to go into your settings and then into general and to background app refresh. And you want to turn off any application in here that does not need to be refreshed in the background constantly. So things like social media apps are going to be the biggest contributors to battery drain. So things like Snapchat, things like Twitter, things like YouTube, things like that do not need to be updated and refreshed in the background. Every time you go into the application, just refresh it. It's very simple. You don't need it to be refreshing in the background. Otherwise, that will be taking up your battery life. Things like PUBG, most of these really do not need to be enabled. Most people will probably only have a handful of applications on here that they actually need background app refresh turned on for. And the next two tips have nothing to do with software. So the first one is to simply turn off your phone every once in a while. So I turn off my phone maybe once every 2 weeks. So I would maybe try turning off your phone at least once every 2 weeks. Maybe twice a month, you should turn your phone off just because it's good for the battery, it's good for the operating system, it's good for the software. So I would just turn your phone off periodically. Not all the time, not every night, but just periodically. And then the final one is to get your battery replaced if you are under 80% in your battery capacity. So if you go to your settings and then to battery health, and if this shows a figure under 80%, I would strongly consider getting a new battery from Apple. So don't go to another place, just get it straight from Apple. And you may want to even consider getting a new phone if it's really bad. And if you have an old phone you've been wanting to upgrade, you may not want to spend the money on a battery. You may as well just go ahead and upgrade to a new phone. So that's something to keep an eye on. If nothing else is working in this video, it's probably because you have a bad battery that needs replacing. But anyways, guys, there you have it. Those are over 40 tips and tricks to get the most out of your battery life here on iOS 15. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate if you gave this a thumbs up. And of course, make sure you subscribe for a lot more iOS 15 coverage coming very, very soon, along with a lot of iPhone 13 coverage here on the channel. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.